Welcome to the Story Tinker podcast, a place for in-depth analysis of webtoon stories. Co-hosted by sharp, witty, and dare I say thirsty fans, we dive deep into every episode, analyzing character struggles, relationship development, and of course, theories. You can follow the Story Tinker on YouTube, podcast platforms, and social media. For bonus content, sneak peeks, and more, you can support the Story Tinker on Patreon. We are really appreciative of your likes, subscribes, and follows on all platforms. Thank you for listening to the Story Tinker, and let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 86 of the 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗰𝗏 podcast on the Story Tinker. And today we have Vita, Sakura, and Sheyla.
Hi.
And Sakura has a special shout out.
I would like to give a shout out to Darla, and today's her birthday. And Darla, if you're watching this, happy birthday. We wish you all the best, and we love your not safe for work memes, and you always make us laugh. So please keep doing what you can to make more memes and make us laugh. Love you, Darla.
That's awesome. Should we sing happy birthday? I like your celebratory thing. Should we sing happy birthday?
Yeah.
Okay. Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Darla. Happy birthday to you.
Awesome. Okay, and now we can get into our episode.
All right, so we start things off with Miss Haru. Yes, I think someone broke into one of our apartments. And then we see Poppy just kind of literally trembling in fear in the corner, just kind of at this point realizing that like, hey, Tora's there, the attacker is gone. And she says, Tora? And I believe this is 𝗪𝗲𝗆 speaking. He's on the phone. He's like, I bet it's from Mr. Lee from the 3rd floor. He's a walking magnet with all that gold jewelry he wears. Sorry, this actually might be a nosy neighbor.
Yeah, I think it sounds more like a nosy neighbor to me.
Yeah.
Which is cute. I like to hear their little gossip, you know, like, I bet it's that one.
Neighbors know everything. They hear all sorts of things. And then she's just kind of like, oh my goodness, Tora? And Tora's like, yeah, none other. And I thought it was really cute because he kind of has like this little smile on his face.
Yeah, I thought his whole demeanor was very, very calm. I know later he tells that to Poppy, like, cool as a cucumber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Part of me wonders if like he was deliberately calm so that he wouldn't trigger Poppy, like to help her calm down.
I feel like he also had his meltdown earlier in the night too. So he might have just kind of channeled like an inner zen at that point, and he just got better at hiding it. Like when he was just yes, something really stressful happened, but he also like he was close to both. He was close to finding that inner peace within himself too. And I feel like when you just have someone that's in extreme need, you tend to prioritize what they're feeling over your own. So I think in some respect he's compartmentalizing too.
You know, it's funny because I'm thinking back, like I had 2 times where my like close family members were in accidents. Like my son was in an accident where he like almost died, and my husband was in an accident. And both of those times I become like the opposite of panicked. I become super, super like non-emotional, very like on top of things, very down to earth, because I'm like, I have to be present. And I don't really have emotional breakdowns, but if anything, it's like it releases slowly, but much, much later. Like because I know like I have to be there, and I just like, people might think I'm cold, but I'm like, no, I'm just being responsible.
Kind of have to put your feelings aside for a moment, right? To be there for everybody else's feelings.
Exactly.
I also want to add on that I feel like Tora seems to like handle his emotions better than way before, because you know he is pretty sensitive. We all know how he is, especially he does get triggered. But now it seems like he knows how to keep his composure, and he knows how to deal with his, own like, sensitivity and his weakness. So I think he got better with that now.
And keep in mind though, this is like known territory for him, right? Like crazy stuff happening is like his life. And if you think about like the meltdown that he had before, it had to do with like his emotions for Poppy, and that's like unknown territory for him, right?
Definitely.
So I feel like here he's so calm. Like at first it freaks me out. I'm like, why is he so calm? Like she almost died, you know? But he's so calm. And then I'm like, oh, because he's used to seeing, like, he's used to watching people die probably. So it's like nothing to him, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, so then continuing on, we see Poppy then asking him, how did you, then ... And again, I think this is her just starting to finally decompress. She drops the knife. And then Tora is there just comforting her, just like reminding her, hey, he's gone, sweetheart. Don't worry, you're safe now. And then we hear the neighbors, oh yes, we called the police. A couple of them were patrolling nearby and they'll be here soon. Thank goodness. And then meanwhile, we come back to our favorite couple and she's like, I'm sorry, Tora. I'll never hang up on you again, ... And I thought this next panel was so freaking funny where Tora's like, okay. But like on his inner monologue, he's like, what's she talking about? And again, we see such a difference between what Tora thinks is rude versus Poppy. And Poppy is like, oh yeah, she'll say goodbye and then hang up. It's just her being like channeling that passive aggressive energy. Meanwhile, Tora will just hang up on people and like be aggressive.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was like a teenager, my little brother called his friend for homework, and this was how it went. Like, let's say once he got to him on the phone, he's like, I don't know, Shmuel, what's for homework? And the guy was like, I don't know, 77. He just hung up the phone. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't say thank you, nothing. He just hung up.
Rude.
Yeah.
So rude.
Yeah, their hug is so sweet. This is like, you know, Tora realized what she needed. Like she couldn't even finish her sentence. And he just, you know, took action. And I think, you know, we talked a bit before, I think, how he isn't necessarily so articulate with words. Sometimes he is actually really articulate, but he seems to be very physically affectionate. And, you know, there's like love languages where how you like to both receive and give. Really think that his love language is touch.
Agreed. And then just while they're hugging, I do want to, like, this is one of the things I'm still mulling over just as I reread the chapter more than one time. We know that Lily loves to spend a lot of time with the backgrounds. And I thought, especially when they're hugging, both when you're zoomed out and you see kind of like the easel on the grounds, the balcony, and then when you zoom in especially, I feel like there's a couple of pieces that are clues for us to kind of pick up on, but again, I haven't quite pieced it together. Like you see the little square to the right behind Poppy's head. I think that's the panel from the door that's missing. Yeah. And then we see that her room is disheveled. I haven't looked back on previous chapters. That might just be a sign of some of the struggle from before, when she was trying to like fight off the intruder and like flicking the lights on and off. Oh yeah, and then there's like even a zoom in shot of that square panel itself too, which is like, okay, this is probably important. Take a note, Lily. Yeah, and then literally the next panel that we get, it's a glass panel, as I thought, and we see a frame of the mask that the intruder was wearing, and Tora just starting to put the pieces together. It wouldn't have made a clear shot at his legs with that in the way. The edges are too clean to be paper that tore off, and even if I did with her neighbor, her neighbors would be up here in an instant from all that noise. So this is just getting a little bit of Tora's like quick calculations when he's like, when he first assessed the situation and saw that Poppy was being under attack.
Yeah, so this actually answers my question, because I know what last chapter I was like, why didn't he shoot him? And, you know, so I guess it seems first of all apparent that he didn't want to shoot him in the face. For whatever reason, whether he wanted information or have him alive. So his intention was to shoot at his legs. And I guess, you know, he was like wondering whether the door had paper or glass. and he, realized it must have been glass. So I feel like that pane up there was conveniently fell off, so he could both see the intruder and realize that it was glass.
He's a clever boy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have kind of like the inverse of that shot. We have 𝗪 instead looking through where Tora was previously at both Tora and Poppy. And he's like, big bro, there's no one else in the compound. I checked. And we see that panel missing from the door. So we're kind of getting that clue of how the intruder came into the apartment in the first place.
Oh,
and
I think Sakura takes over from 𝗪's part.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. I knew I was going to forget.
Yes. So as you mentioned, now we see to the panel where Poppy's house, I will say apartment, is now like a mess since the intruder came in. And then you see, and then now 𝗪's point of view saw the knife and there was bloodstains onto it. And then you see 𝗪, I don't know why, but I love when 𝗪 was saying, oh shit, because he looked good. He just looks good.
I think it's also because he looks intense. 𝗪 is like a very mild-mannered guy usually.
Yeah.
But when somebody steps up to the plate, and like we'll see his behavior in the next, couple panels, when he becomes like heroic and brave and strong, like that's admirable. So I think that's what we're seeing.
But yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, like he looks good. I'm sorry. But he said, oh shit. And then he said, big bro. And then Tora said, he's on the rooftop. And then through his command, he's like, go from the balcony in case the door is locked from the outside. So Tora just usually like constructed him like that he's up there and make sure everything's locked. And then later on, you see 𝗪 was pretty loyal to Tora. He nodded and did his job. And then later on, Poppy was like, careful, 𝗪. And then later on, you got the neighbors was screaming. And she's like, goodness gracious, hubby, come see. Mrs. Haru, are you at your balcony? 𝗪's going after the burglar. And then there's so many exclamations going on. And then Tora was, paying attention to Poppy and said, I'll get ice for your ankle. And then Poppy said, thank you. There's an ice pack in my fridge. And then 𝗪's fangirl second story. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah. He was like, okay, bye. I got this.
It's funny that this is how the nosy neighbor was drawn, because that's like exactly how I pictured the nosy neighbors in my head. And I'm like reading their comments.
She's like angrily professing her affection.
But I just also want to add on that, like, I think was Trevor, who was the old security guard. I feel like not everybody likes him, but I'm seeing that 𝗪's getting the more attention since he works here. A lot of people like him and he's doing his job. But I also feel like, the woman, I think 𝗪's fangirl thinks he's attractive. And you can see her she's like, look at that, Mrs. Haru. Our 𝗪 is a keeper. Don't you dare replace him with a new guard. Be careful, sweetie. Don't fall off that ledge. I'm just so happy that he was like Lily gives him the attention, 𝗪 the attention, and I feel like he deserved the attention. Like, I thought it was pretty cute.
Adorable. What do you think of the fact that Tora sent 𝗪 after the burglar instead of going after him himself?
Honestly, I feel like, he's pretty, I don't know how to feel about this, but I feel like he's more like aware of Poppy. But since like Tora, excuse me, Tora knows that 𝗪's job was to be the security guard, but also he was, remember the last episode he was asleep, so I can see that like 𝗪's trying to make it up. He's trying to be loyal, and that's what so far I don't know how to feel about that, but I thought it was pretty hilarious.
I have strong feelings about this, actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
So Tora is obviously like the alpha. He's the one that trained everyone. We get into it later. And he's the leader. He's the one that delegates. This is like a role that I'm getting used to myself, like just as a physician. And when you're in an intense situation, the only way you operate is having a leader and designating roles. If you break from that formation, and this is also just, since I'm learning this, and one of my colleagues happened to be in the military, and he was basically impressing on me how important it is to have rank and also have very established roles within your team. And essentially, if the leader has to pick up slack, that means that he's not doing his job well enough, and the team members are not doing their job well enough either. And it's not an efficient or productive team. So what I got out of this is Tora being like, no, I am going to delegate. I have enough faith in Q because I trained him well, and he has shown himself to be skilled enough to handle this on his own. He is going to be the one that does the work, and I'm going to stay here and comfort Poppy. Like, to me, it was very clear that he was being a very strong leader in that point, at that point in time. So I personally love that about what happened. Like, to me, it just shows that he's a good leader.
And also, I want to add on that, in my tradition, that Tora actually means tiger, and basically a tiger's like strength is all about leadership. So I just want to point that out.
What you said, Vita, like rings so true to me. My natural instinct is to do everything myself. I have a very hard time delegating. And when I first saw this, I was like, Tora, why aren't you like running off right away?
Yeah.
And then I took a second and I was like, he's more important and valuable in comforting Poppy. Like, you can't do that. And exactly what you said, it's so true. And it's something, honestly, I have to like really like drum into my own head because I'm very bad at delegating. So everything you said was like gold.
I agree too. And I know, Mindy, you've done business school, right?
Yeah.
And so with me being in business school, what you said, Vita, really resonated with me because you do learn about like management versus leadership, right? Like managing is one world and leadership is a whole nother world. And it really does make sense because you have to be ready for when shit hits the fan, right? You can't do everything. Like you can't do everything, and you have to prepare. That's what a good leader does. A good leader doesn't handle everything. A good leader prepares his direct reports, his or her peers, right, to be able to handle these type of situations. And I hadn't thought of it that way. I really hadn't. I was more thinking like, wow, this is cool. We get to see another side of you, right? Like that's where my head was at. But now that you put in that perspective, I'm like, she's right. Like Tora he's doing good, and so is Q. Like it's a really good team and a really good dynamic because that also shows he trusts this guy, right? Like he really does trust this guy to go and let him take care of business. Like for me, like I got to do everything myself because if I don't do it myself, I know it's not done right. Like, like I want it done right, I got to do it myself. So I relate to you guys. Like I want to do everything myself because I want to get it done the right way. So for him to trust him to go after this guy, like that does speak volumes, right? Like he knows that he can put his trust in you to get the job done.
Yep. Sheyla, I relate to everything you said, Sheyla. I have it like with like here's I'm going to admit one of my biggest flaws, which is like it's over such stupidity and nonsense. Like I want to have everything in my house done my way, right? Like down to the smallest thing. I'm like, this is how you wash the dishes. This is how you put them away.
That cup doesn't go there. This cup goes here.
I'm such a horrible micromanager, and I'm like, Mindy, Yoel, right? Like I'm like, let him do it. He's doing the chore. He's doing you a favor. Let him do it his way. I'm like, he could wash the dishes his own freaking way. Stop it. And like I just have to like, I've got to the point where I don't say anything. I'm still thinking it, but I stop myself from saying it. So that took like 12 years, like.
Yeah, I just started living with my fiance. I think like it's been 2 or 3 months now. We're getting there.
It takes some getting used to, huh?
Yeah.
Like it's a lifetime of work. It really is.
Doing the bold things, and then I'll do like the little spot cleans, like deeper dives. Yeah, we're figuring it out.
Let's compare notes next podcast. See how it's working out.
It's not 12 years,
but also like you guys mentioned, I agree with you guys about teamwork, because I'm sure he does that to Damien and his Brian. So especially he does train those guys to have you know, their own roles that, you know, not only for like, how do you say it? I believe that it was Pinky who is young. So I feel like he has a long way to go. So he pretty much like, you know, learn little by little from Tora and you, because that's all teamwork. But now let's get to the panel. And we can see that Poppy was just in the silent where Tora is getting the ice pack. And yes, and then you can see Tora came back. And then he said, you want to go sit inside? She said, not right now. I'll stay in here for a bit. My legs feels like jello. Oh, and then
have you ever had that? Where your legs feel like jello and you couldn't move?
Yes.
Not
even just your legs. Like when you feel like that, it's like your whole body. Like you just you can't move, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because I was trying to think, because I when she said that I related, but I can't remember what instance it was that I felt that way. I don't know. So I'm probably gonna think about it. If I tell you, if I remember, I'll let you know.
I do want to go back a couple panels though to the knife with the blood, because something that came to mind when I saw this was, I wonder if 𝗪 is gonna try to like run some sort of like database check or something. Like that's the first thing that, like when I saw him, like when I saw his face when he was like, oh shit, like that's what I thought he was thinking, like, oh shit, there's blood, let me run this, you know, let me run the shit. But then I saw that the next panel was him and Tora interacting, so I was like, okay, that's not what, I don't think that's what he was thinking, but I wonder if he's gonna do it. I mean, he's so like tech savvy and he has access to all, you know, these databases. Like, why wouldn't he? You know?
Definitely. And he's smart too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if he was able to track down Poppy's address and like track down all these people, like, yeah, like I'm sure he would be able to, I don't know, like with blood, I feel like you can find almost anyone, right? So I don't know.
Well, if their blood is in some kind of database, which,
yeah,
I don't know, Vita, you're in the medical field, but of course, you know, there's America, there's, you know, Naren City, I don't know how they run their things, but
I mean, you have I think it's not necessarily medicine. I think it's more like it's forensics. So
yeah.
Right.
I think you have like the sample, but you would need there isn't necessarily like a database of everyone's DNA. Like they're not going to find, like you need to match it with someone else. Like if they're suspects, they can take their blood and then compare. But right now they just have one half of the equation. They need suspects. And I mean, obviously there's 𝗪.
What if they go into 𝗪's office? Like there's so much DNA in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So they would need to run it with that, like to compare.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, I don't know how pre-planned Tora is, but what if Tora is like a little bit paranoid and got, you know, DNA samples of all his guys, including like Goliath. That's another candidate for this guy. Maybe he has like a sample of like, these are people who, you know, I don't trust, and I'm just having their samples just in case, you know, if I need them later, like here's Martin, here's Sharp, here's Claude, you know, I have them all lined up. Maybe he has that stockpiled somewhere.
Oh, definitely.
Well, he does have a bloody shoe from who knows who, you know?
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. And there were bloody papers too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How did 𝗪 kill his partner again? Was it strangling or was it?
Did they show? I don't think they showed, right?
No.
No.
Oh, it's a bummer.
It's a bummer. I'm not ready to see that.
My men's humor is a little different now. A little more gallows humor.
Yeah.
Yes, so we see the Poppy's bedroom, and then Poppy herself was worried. He says, "Will you be okay on his own?" And then Tora said, "Don't worry, he's fine." And those punks are trained professionals, as you mentioned, Vita.
Yeah.
And then she said, and then Poppy said, "Whoa, like in combat and stuff, even Damien and Brian they look so unassuming, and I never would have guessed. But after seeing you climb up that balcony, I'm sold."
So that sounds like a little sarcastic to me, doesn't it? Like,
kinda.
Or is it just me? Like I don't know, like she knows, I mean, she obviously knows what Tora's doing, right? Like the kind of whatnot. And I feel like she's just like kind of poking fun, like, ooh, like I would have never known that they know how to do all this stuff, you know, like that's kind of how it came off to me.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking she was just coming across more naive. And it's more that she just didn't put two and two to, well, actually, she would put two and two together, wouldn't she?
That's what I'm saying. Like she has admitted to knowing more than she leads on. So I feel like she knows what these guys are capable of, and she's just kind of like teasing Tora. Like I wouldn't know.
In that case,
maybe more sassy, like
in that
sassy.
case, maybe it's her complimenting Tora, like her secret, like building him up. I thought she was just like, naive, but that's again, I tend to believe what people say at face value. Like I don't detect sarcasm usually. I'm like, you say it, you mean it. Like this, I'm very like sweet like that. So, but yeah, that's an alternative.
Definitely. And I think that would be
sassy.
Yeah, because then she says, she's like, those are some pretty impressive moves, like in the movies, you know. I feel like she's just like kind of like, yeah, like poking fun at him.
Yeah. Well, it's your turn to take over, Sheyla, anyway, so you can continue.
Yeah. Okay, so then we see Tora, he's putting the ice pack on her leg. I wonder what kind of ice pack that is, because it's like completely wrapping around her ankle. Like,
yeah, maybe it's, you know, I guess it's not ice. I mean, I think maybe we would call an ice pack the hard one, but it's
there are flexible crunch or whatever. Yeah, it could be that.
It has gel or something inside.
Yeah, it could be that. And so this panel is interesting because I thought her legs were tingling because of the cold. And I find out that's not the case. Yeah. Her legs are tingling because of Tora. She says, his hands are sending tingles up my legs, and he can obviously tell. We can see him smirk. And he's like tapping. I think that's what it is, right? The press. He's like tapping on the ice pack. And she picks up on his little smirk, right? And she's wondering, he looks pleased. And over here, it almost looks like he might be like, I don't know, blushing a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, he
is. Yeah.
Right?
I thought he was blushing because of like the caretaking role where he's like, you know, he gets to touch Poppy and take care of her. So I think it's like a, you know, intimate moment for him.
Oh, I was thinking all the compliments.
Okay.
Well, it's like a combination of both, I think, and he's getting all those warm, gooey feelings.
So then he asks Poppy, better now? And this panel is a little confusing. She said, you? And I can tell, like, so the badump is obviously like her heartbeat, right? But I'm not sure why she asked, like, is she asking, like, are you better?
I think
no,
we'll see the next panel.
He was putting it, if you look at the next panel, it explains it.
Oh, yeah, you trained all of them. You were basking in the compliments, weren't you? Okay. So then maybe you are right, Mindy. Maybe she wasn't being like a smart ass, you know, and she really was like,
right. The fact that she realizes it makes it seem like
right. Because then she's like, oh, you did. Yeah. And then Tora just kind of like dismisses that, right? The fact that she just pointed out that he was loving all the compliments. He goes, he goes,
a hard time. A lot of people that didn't grow up with praise have a hard time accepting praise. And I know, like, my husband too. And I think it's also part of like Dutch culture, like in his family, they're just not very effusive with praise. And every time I tell him like, oh, you're so special, you're this and you're this, he's like, he doesn't know how to handle it. He's just like, doesn't say anything. I'm like, just say thank you, like say you're right or something, you know?
Yep. No,
Yeah.
you're right. I did struggle with taking compliments for a long time. And then I got a little too used to it, you know, like people would be like, oh, your hair is so pretty. I'd be like, I know, look, you know? And yes, and sometimes I feel like that comes across like stuck up. You know, I'm not being stuck up. I love your compliment. Thank you. You know, like look at it more.
Confident.
Right, yeah. And then the next panel we can see a thumb. He picks up the sticks that were on the floor next to the panel, right? Were the pieces to the, what's that thing called for the art?
Easel.
Right. It were he looks like he's putting it back together. And he stares at the painting. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is the painting that him and Poppy looked at the first time he was at her apartment, right? So here he's like, I think he's like just thinking about that first time and how Poppy saw, I can't remember what Poppy saw, but he saw like a war happening or something like that.
What it was, she used this easel to clean her brushes and like take the paint off. But she didn't tell Tora at first. She was like, oh, Tora, what do you see? And Tora was like, well, I see this war scene. And I thought it was really interesting because you almost have like a reversal situations where you have like back at that dinner, it was like a really cozy environment and the painting represented like this war scene. And now you have this really chaotic environment. And I think this just kind of, it's not quite a reversal, but I think it's very interesting that Tora fixates on it because he's remembering like a nicer time when there wasn't trauma in the apartment, but at the same time, like he saw war with this painting, and maybe it's like a little bit of foreboding within himself. I don't know. I just thought it's fascinating. Like, what could he be thinking about and remembering just by seeing it?
So what I thought when I saw the painting was those two black spots. I thought, like, I didn't remember them being so pronounced. And I actually went back to the original episode, 27, I think, to look at it. And I was like, okay, they were there, but I feel like now they're darker. And I had wondered originally, like, oh, was Poppy like adding black paint because she was painting dark things because she was in a black mood and a dark, depressing mood. So they were there before, but I do feel like they're more black, and that would be a representation of her life and how it's getting.
She painted Mr. Lamb in the interim, so it could have been like black paint from that. Sorry, I'm thinking this is like totally being practical.
Yeah.
I also want to point out something. So, you know, with the painting, I just feel like there is some sort of foreshadowing, because the reason why, as you guys were mentioning about the colors and all, is because, you know, it was just a random, like Poppy would do it something randomly, but then I feel that Lily's intention is just to give a foreshadowing, because it made, when Tora talks about war and all, it's talking about maybe something might happen, you know, because like I said, like everything seems to be like colors and, you know, it's just like her own world, but by the time the actual like intense moments happening, it gets darker, because you can see like on that panel that it just looks darker. Like there will be some large spots of dark colors like black. I just see that it's more like there might be some dark, either them two are going to fall into darkness. So I'm seeing that, like, you know, when it comes to art, it's all about expressing ourselves. You want to express your anger through your colors, how you stroke your, you know, how like make movements with your pen or a brush. So sometimes it just tells me a lot, like there will be a foreshadowing going on.
What do you think of it as, like, maybe the black spots represent Tora, but like maybe it's not necessarily Tora, but like Tora's perception of himself in Poppy's life, where he's like this dark stain.
Yes.
That's a good one. Ouch.
So I know that.
There's a meaning to like the amount of dark spots and the size, right? Because there's two and there's like one little one and one big one. I don't have any ideas, but yeah.
big Tora, little Goliath. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, she's so good. Talking about just, oh, I love Lily.
Okay, so then we see where Tora's helping her lean back against the wall. He says, here, lean back. I cleared some space for you. She says, thank you. And then he says, want to tell me what happened? And she says, okay, but I don't remember the exact details. It was all just a blur. Now, I can relate to that, obviously not to that level, but sometimes like crazy things happen in your life, right? And it all happens so fast that you can't, like, you really don't remember what just happened. You're like, it's like little fragments, right? Of like memories that you try to put together. I think the worst thing that's ever happened to me, I was in a car accident. And that's exactly how it felt, right? Because I was in the car accident. I was in the car. The next thing I know, I'm like in the middle of an intersection, in the middle of a wreck. And I'm like, what? Like, what just happened? Like, I legit was questioning, like, if I was alive. I'm like, wow. I'm like, am I dead? Like, and my brother just happened to be there shopping in the area when the accident happened. And he recognized my car. So he like runs into the middle of the street, right? Runs up to my window. And I thought I was dead. I'm like, did I die? I'm like seeing my brother, you know? And it's crazy because you really don't remember. Like in the moment, I didn't remember what happened. It was until like, as like the days went on that I started like piecing together, you know, like what happened.
Wow. That's crazy. Wow. Amazing.
Okay, so then, oh, sorry, were you gonna share?
Yeah, I was just thinking through things. It's I've had a couple of moments too. It wasn't life-threatening, but I've had a couple limb-threatening accidents. And for me, what was interesting is there are some moments that I remember with just so much clarity, like so much clear, like it's just crystal clear what happened. And then, or like different things, I should say. But then, like you mentioned, there's a couple where I just don't remember. Like some of it is a blur. And to me, it was always interesting. And this is something about like with reading too. Like, I don't know if you guys know Wordsworth, but he had written a poem about this too, where you go through something traumatic, but it's almost secondary. It's more about all the little things that you remember before and all the little things you remember after. But the in between, like the actual moment, it almost feels like an afterthought. Like, how can you explain it, type of thing. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking through
what you're talking about though, because of that car accident. Don't judge me. I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, and I like flew into the dashboard. I was a passenger, and that part I do remember clearly. My head hit so hard against the windshield, the windshield cracked. Like I remember staring at that big old crack. And then touching myself because I thought I was going to be covered in blood, you know? But luckily, I didn't even have a scratch, like nothing. Wow. Nothing, not a bruise, not a bump. Like, that's how hard-headed I am. Nothing. But that moment, that I do remember very clearly. Like, I remember so vividly looking at the crack. And I remember my emotions at that time. I remember itching for blood and freaking out when there wasn't any blood, right? Because I'm like, that there should be. Why is there no blood? I think that's why I thought I was dead, because there was nothing, right? So that piece I do remember vividly, but anything like the little pieces before and after, that's what's kind of like I really remember, you know, right? Isn't it weird? Like why? Like out of all the things that happened, why does my brain choose to process this particular one, you know? That's weird.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
it's weird.
Okay, so then Poppy goes to explain, and she says, I think I was preparing dinner in the kitchen when he sneaked up on me. He gagged me before I could scream for help, then started tying my hands up. I tried to get away, but he was too strong, though I managed to hit the light switch a couple times. I knew there was only a slim chance, but I was hoping someone outside would notice. Okay, what do you guys think?
So smart. That was so smart of her.
Right.
And I'm happy to hear, I'm not surprised, but I'm happy to hear that she tried to fight back. I mean, you know, thank God I've never been in this kind of situation, but I know like a lot of people have a freeze response, and I'm always like hoping, I'm like, please, I don't want to freeze. I don't want to freeze. You know, like I would be so embarrassed, even though I know, like, anyway, I don't want to be judgmental because I know that it just happens. And like so many people describe that they want to move and they can't. So I know it must be like something you can't necessarily control, but I'm happy that she did fight back, that she tried to, and that she did. I mean, she was very resourceful.
Yeah, she was. I would have never thought of flicking the light switch. I feel like in a situation like this, my first instinct is to like see what's going on. Like that sounds so dumb, you know, like, but like who's behind me? Like who's trying to grab me? Like I feel like that would be my first when it shouldn't be. My first instinct should be to like find a weapon or something. But that's how I feel like I would respond. Like I'd be like, who is it? Like, you know, like they're gonna be like, it's me. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty smart of her, and it kind of, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, right? How she knows more than she leads on. I don't know if this is like her first encounter like this, but she seems to be a little too like savvy in this type of situation, right? Like, okay, let me flick the lights on and off. Somebody is like behind me covering my face, you know, like even in all that panic, she still had like a linear thought process, right? Like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna try to do this. And I feel like that's kind of telling as to like, I don't know, like I feel like there's more to Poppy than naive a little bit.
The other thing too that we didn't quite just mention, her shirt, snark attack.
Yes.
And then if you just add, if you just change one letter,
what if it's a hint for shark? It's shark. What if that's a hint for us?
Wow.
Oh, no.
Okay.
So shark, so shark attack, snark attack, but also sneak attack.
Okay.
I get that.
There's a lot going on with that shirt.
Lily's giving us hints right now.
Yeah.
It was a sneak attack by shark. No, just kidding. I don't know. Poppy knew that the sneak attack. No, just kidding. No, I'm spiraling. Okay.
It's funny.
Really knows what she's doing.
Where was I? Okay. Then so after she's explaining, right, she turns to look at Tora and she asks, did you, right? Like, did you notice the flickering lights? And he says, yeah, I saw. Clever move. You can see how like she just lights up, right? She's like, oh, he complimented me. And then she goes on to say, anyway, he got distracted by that and I broke free and tried to escape, but my ankle hurt too much and I didn't get far before he trapped me in the corner. Now, I don't know if I missed it, but did they say how she hurt her ankle?
Yeah, I was also thinking she tripped, and I remember she tripped earlier, but right when she was waiting for the bus, but I don't think she hurt her ankle. So I don't know. I'm guessing either now or before she somehow hurt her ankle.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay, but my ankle hurt too much and I didn't get far before he trapped me in this corner. So I wonder if she was gonna try to like jump that balcony because she was like heading that way or like climb it or something.
Oh, yeah.
Which would be a little surprising coming from Poppy, but not too much. I feel like that's something like that would happen, you know?
Oh my God, I'd be terrified. She's only the floor and she's short. Like you can't. I mean, I'm already getting.
She wouldn't reach the top of the balcony above. I can relate hardcore. Like I can barely reach my kitchen cabinets. So she says, at that point, I thought I was done for. And then I saw that. And Tora asked, that knife sharpener? And she says, yep, along with the kitchen knife, I was going to sharpen. I usually do that to soothe myself when I'm on edge.
So when I read that, I was like, Poppy, are you like some kind of axe murderer? Like who sharpens knives to like soothe themselves?
Well, I thought it was weird too. I was like, who just sharpens knives? That's weird. But somebody in the Facebook page said that it's like a thing. Like people sharpen knives, and it's like something that you do to calm your brain because it takes so much focus to sharpen the knife or something like that. I thought that was interesting because I had never heard of it. And I thought Poppy was just like preparing for the sneak attack.
I know people who are like into having really good culinary tools sharpen their knives. You know, I have friends who are foodies and they're like obsessed with, oh, my knife has to be super sharp. And I'm like, yes, mine are not. I don't care. But, yeah.
Isn't it weird though that she like, or maybe it's not weird, but like I have a knife sharpener, but it's in my kitchen with my like stack of knives. It almost looks a little out of place because it's the knife sharpener is with like all her art supplies. You know, it's like a random thing.
Yeah, well, I agree, but maybe, you know, if it's her soothing thing, right? If she paints to soothe, she also sharpens knives.
You're right.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's that far of a stretch too. She just has like knives that aren't just kitchen knives. Like we already know that she's in the mafia. I don't know if it's that far of a stretch for her.
Oh my gosh, I know. I can't wait till we pick up that thread.
Or she also, where you're like, she's a small girl, right? And she lives alone. You also gotta be prepared for the worst, you know? When I was younger and I was living alone, I was living in the big city and I lived like right on the corner of like a really big intersection, like a really, really big intersection. I was maybe like a 2-minute drive from the interstate. And again, don't judge me, but I used to sleep with like a knife under my pillow that was next to me because I never knew, like I had like weirdos would like creep up like on the windows and stuff, right? Because my apartment building was so exposed to traffic and to the street. Like it was so easy access for any weirdo, right? So I did sleep with a knife under my pillow just in case I needed to use it. So maybe that's what Poppy does. She just keeps things around for safety.
And
I don't think that's weird, by the way. I think that's normal. Like,
okay.
Tora warned her too about the balcony and how easy it could be for an intruder to come in. The fact that it's right there, it actually makes a lot of it makes more sense.
Definitely.
He did tell her. I forgot about that.
To be honest,
and I think this is where you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, so she continues and tells him, anyway, I grabbed it and swung it at him. I wasn't even thinking by that point. Like I was purely running on survival instinct, like a kill or be killed kind of thing, right? Which, you know, people do say they, you know, you switch into like kind of go back into primitive mode when you're faced with such extreme circumstances. And she said, which is funny because home intruders don't typically kill, right? Which is also hilarious because she's like thinking of some random, you know, fact that she remembered. So she has the two elements to her. And she's like, anyway, that was when you got here. The rest is history. So that was what happened in a nutshell. And she isn't looking at Tora at this point. Like they've ceased their hug. And he's like, in a nutshell, sweetheart, in a nutshell is what you say when your boss wants the details, but you haven't got any and you're just stalling for time. And he at this point has moved again toward her and, you know, is touching her. And she's like, ha, Tora, are you sure you've never had a corporate job before? And then the next panel is hilarious. We see, you know, Tora, oh, that's what the TMP was. I wasn't sure. T says, huh, maybe we're not that different after all. Poppy's like, oh my gosh. Then you have this elderly person wearing a corporate suit, holding a wine glass, saying, so Tora, how goes your latest findings? And he's like, you know, looking all gangstery with a cigarette and his cute little face. He's like, yeah, about that. Well, in a nutshell, it's like this.
I think that's Vincent. Maybe I'm wrong, but I probably think that is Vincent because that's the only person that he works with for a long time.
Okay, yeah, I guess he's the mafia boss, right?
If it was like a corporate position.
Picture, but I don't know. So it's funny. And they both have very cute faces. And Vincent, I guess, does like to drink.
Oh, I want to see Tora holding a teacup.
Quincy would totally teach him how, by the way. He's like, no, you have to put your pinky out, my friend. And he goes to her and he, you know, kind of zooms in on her and like goes closer to her physically, I think, to be like a warm body next to her. And he says, look, that was pretty damn brave of you. But what I'm saying is, and now you see her hands like trembling, because she's not looking at him. She's like in her own world. And when he sees her hand trembling, he goes and reaches out and covers it with his own hand, which is super comforting and sweet. And he says, it was also pretty effing scary, wasn't it? And this is so emotionally intuitive of him because, you know, he's giving her the space to express her emotions. And he's kind of like prompting her and telling her, I know this is how you must be feeling. It's okay to say that. It's okay to admit that you're scared or we're scared.
You know what? I think that's like the cutest thing ever because I don't think Tora was ever given that opportunity to admit that he's scared, even to his own self, right? I feel like fear wasn't even an option, like, and you can't talk to anybody about it. But when it comes to Poppy, he's like, it's okay. Like, you can tell me, you can talk about it. It just is at my heartstrings.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the exact opposite with Vincent when Tora was down there in that underground thing, and he's like, Vincent's like, are you scared? And Tora's like crying, and he's like, I'm not scared. So, yeah, he had the exact opposite experience.
Yeah, because he knows what it's like to be in those positions, and I feel like he's also giving what he wished he had received.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so beautiful.
I feel like every human being has their own fears. In regards to, I know that Tora does has a fear because of course he's human. But you know, the idea that when he was comforting Poppy, like as you guys were saying, like he never had the opportunity to do it because nobody did it for him, so he wants to have that type of like, you know, I don't know how to say it, but he wants to like, you know, show that to Poppy that he cares, because of course like he does show, you know, tough skin, but he's soft inside. But you know, I would just want to give a prop to Tora for being, you know, the type of guy that, because I'm sure that Poppy would never have anyone who does that to her before, but that was pretty touching in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Poppy takes a moment to look at him, right? She finally looks at him in the face, which she was kind of avoiding before. And then she admits, yeah, it was terrifying. He says, I thought so. You're being way too calm for what just happened. And she's like, okay, Phil. And he pulls her in for another hug. And he's like, seriously, why does everyone keep calling me that? Who the fuck is Phil? So cute. She just laughed. I love that line so much. I think I should call this episode, Who the F is Phil?
Yes.
That's so funny.
And that's that.
So I have a question. Obviously in the past couple chapters, Tora has been a little bit dense, just with how he's been interacting with Poppy. Like, yes, he is emotionally intelligent, but with everyday situations, he still doesn't have all the tools that he needs to communicate effectively. And even just remember just courteous things like, hey, I can't pick you up, or just send a quick text type of thing. Obviously, we love Tora. Does this episode completely excuse what he did before? Do you think it's just showing different side of him? Yeah, I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are, because I personally don't think it excuses his behavior, but it's nice to see that they still have an emotional connection where they can talk through things.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Oh, go ahead, Minnie.
You go first.
So I do agree with you. I don't think it excuses his behavior, but I like that because you're right. He's never been, like you said, given the tools or the resources, right, to properly communicate. I feel like communication was actually a privilege that he was never granted, right? And so in the last chapter, he was kind of trying, he's like on his own trying to piece all that together because he did recognize, hey, like that was messed up, right? What I did to Poppy. And he remembers, oh crap, like I stood her up, and he's like working through it. And I don't think that this excuses any of that, but I do like that he is, because step number one is recognizing that there is a problem, right? And he's recognizing that there is a problem. And I hope that after like all the dust settles from this craziness, I hope they revisit, and I hope that they don't just leave it and kind of like you mentioned, like let this be like the makeup for how he acted, you know. But I hope this leads to them being, I hope it leads to an open conversation, right? As to, hey, that was not cool. Like, how are you not going to do that next?
And I mean, you see it like directly in this chapter too, that there's different levels for what they even perceive rude behavior to be. Like Tora will just hang up on someone versus Poppy will say goodbye and then hang up. So it's like Tora doesn't even know when she's, well, he does, but there's a disconnect, obviously.
There's a gap.
There's a gap.
Yeah, like what I was telling you about receiving praise. So I grew up in a house where my mother praised me for anything we did, like me and my brothers. Like if we swept the floor, she's like, thank you so much. If we colored something, she's like, you're the best artist ever. If we, clean our room, like, thank you so much, you did a great job. Like that was how I grew up. And in my husband's house, you only got praised if you did something exceptional. So like if you did everyday things, like why would you get praised for it? And I remember when we first got married and I would tell him, thank you for sweeping the floor. He'd be like, you don't have to tell me thank you. He was like, I'm not intellectually disabled, let's just say, right? He's like, why do you have to tell me thank you? Like, this is a normal thing to do. He's like, if you tell me thank you, you're insulting me by saying that like I is so incapable that sweeping is an accomplishment. I was like, no, I'm just saying thank you.
Like, I appreciate it, damn it.
And whereas for me, and then I literally like at this point, I'm comfortable enough. I'm just like, every time I sweep, I'm like, yo, and he's like, thank you, Mindy. I do the dishes. I'm like, yeah, well, thank you, Mindy. Like I just prompt him. He doesn't remember. Like he didn't grow up the way. I'm like, look what a beautiful job I did cleaning the kitchen, which I do every single day. I'm like, yeah, I just need that praise, Like, like, you did a great job, Mindy.
Kind of wanted to say something about Mindy's saying, because that's kind of true, because I grew up in an Asian household, and normally I was raised that usually my mom wouldn't say much about me and wouldn't praise me, which is I always wanted to be praised, like I always wanted to go to, like, usually when I'm in school, like they would praise you and it would give you that type, like, the accomplishment that you make. But when it comes to Asian households, they were pretty silent. But I get that they do acknowledge it. But later on, I start, like, especially with my past relationships, like, like I always realized that, a lot of people would say this to most of us, saying that action speaks volume than words. Because even in regards to, like, there was, like, a connection that I always feel like, what if people don't say I love, when if they say I love you, do they mean it? Like at the same time, you realize that maybe they have their own ways to express their love, So it's pretty hard for me to, like, I think that everybody's different. I think Tora and probably have their own gaps and all. So pretty much I do want to say that with Mindy, like, hits back home, and, it does make sense that with, like, Tora and then Poppy do have different values and their own, like, emotions and how they express their, like, thoughts and their actions. So I feel like Tora myself would be more of, his actions speaks volume.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just a guy thing, though. I feel like guys are more like they show you they care through what they do rather than verbally, And I don't know, maybe it's just me, But I really do feel like it's a guy thing. Like I see it in my boyfriend. I see it in my son. Like my son doesn't tell me all the time that he loves me, but he always wants to do stuff for me. Mom, let me hold the door. Mom, let me do this. Let me do that. Right. And that's how my boyfriend is too. Like he's like, don't touch groceries. Like when we go grocery shopping, right? Like he has to come in with his arms up to like his shoulders in grocery bags. He won't let me touch him. It's little things like that. And like me, just like you guys mentioned, like I like to hear it. Like tell me, I want to hear the praise, you know, like I want to hear it, but they're not like, it's in the things that they do that they show that they love. But I don't know, like I said, I think it's a guy thing, but I could be wrong.
Right. And I thought some part of communication is key, because sometimes what if something happens, it's all about teamwork. You don't usually communicate, because without communication, how you're gonna know, right?
Yeah.
I was just thinking of that too, because like I loved Poppy's reaction. I know we're talking about previous chapters, but I loved Poppy's reaction where, no, this behavior is not going to fly. We're going to sit down, talk about this in person. And I feel like if you like, you don't need to be a perfect person. Like no one's perfect. To some extent, no one's perfect for each other. The only way you can really have a solid and healthy relationship is just to talk and figure stuff out. And I love Poppy for saying, no, we're going to work this out. We're going to talk about it. Say, we're going to establish concrete boundaries and what is okay and not okay. And Tora obviously has like an inkling that he did something wrong. So I love that it's just setting up for a really healthy dialogue in the future, that, you know, they are two very different people, but as long as they talk to each other and continue to check in, it's going to be a working, functional relationship.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because, and you know, it's my biggest pet peeve with most novels and movies is at the end when the couple finds each other, and if they're romances. The end when the couple finds each other, they find their love. I'm like, what happens for the next 50 years afterwards? Like,
right. Yeah. And it does make it seem very real, right? Because I like that Poppy, like you mentioned, Vita, she talks about how she's going to make it work rather than running. Because she totally could, right? Based off of her experience with jewelry, she totally could. And I can relate hardcore to that, because prior to meeting my boyfriend, as soon as I saw a red flag in someone, I was like, I'm out. I am out. Like, I was like, I'm not gonna even bother. Like, I was like, I'm out. And with my boyfriend, I'm so glad I didn't do that, because it's ended up being so awesome. But it was so hard at the beginning, right? Because I had my experiences, he had his experiences, and at times it was like, okay, this is just not meant to be. Like, let's just part ways, because it's not going to work. But that communication piece, like, we've gotten so much better at it over time. We've been together for over 7 years now. So when I say overtime, I mean like overtime. And we're still working on it. So I really do appreciate that, because it is real, right? It is very real. And that's how it starts. I go, okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's think of solutions, right? Let's not just, oh, I love you. I love you too. Let's forget about it. Right? That's so not healthy.
That's fun. Well, that's awesome. Well, I have like so much to say about this, because this is like most of my life, right? The most important thing that I work on, like the biggest catalyst for growth for me is my marriage. But anyway, but that would like just be derailing and just going on forever. So would you like to move on to the bonus question?
Sure.
All right.
Thank you to my current patrons: Susie Lady Leprous, Lily Jenny, Haley Maria, Molly Veronica, Emily, Joe Rochelle, 𝗪cie HDZ Meg, Anne Rose Priya, Alexa Misty, Laura Joanne, Hattie Jen, Emilda Esther, I'm Watching You, Taurus Papacy, Marie Jen, Emily Jean Jen, Erin D, Kay, Lily, and Beckett. Your support is truly appreciated.